"She is not deaf," the new guard said quietly. And in that moment, the billionaire's world cracked open. They were shouting over her again when it happened, not with anger, not with hate, but with the loud, careless voices of people who had already decided she could not hear. The doctor's lips moved too fast. The tutor smiled too wide. Her mother nodded as if agreement could fix the ache in her chest. And the little girl sat still in her white chair, hands folded, eyes down, while the room spoke about her like she was not their doc. "She is deaf," the doctor said, firm and final. "Born that way. Nothing to be done." That was when the new security man spoke. "She is not deaf." The room froze. He had not raised his voice. He had not stepped forward. He did not need to. His words landed like a stone dropped into deep water, and the ripples reached every corner of the room. The billionaire turned slowly, disbelief tightening his jaw. The doctor stiffened. The mother blinked, hope and fear crashing together in her chest. And the little girl lifted her head. For the first time, she looked directly at the man standing by the door. His name was Elias Ward, and he had learned long ago how to disappear. Within the first moments of his arrival at the estate, people had already decided what he was. Just another guard. Tall, broad, quiet. A man meant to stand near walls and stay out of sight. The kind of man people spoke around not to. His uniform was clean, his posture straight, but there was something worn about him. A stillness that did not come from comfort, but from control. He carried his past in small ways. In the way his eyes scanned rooms before he entered them, in how he positioned himself so he could see exits without turning his head, in the faint scar along his neck, pale against his skin, like a memory that refused to fade. No one asked him where he came from. No one ever did. That suited him just fine. Before the mansion, before the polished floors and silent halls, there had been sand and smoke and heat that burned the lungs. There had been nights where sleep came in pieces, broken by dreams of faces he could not save. Elias had served in places that did not make the news, where silence meant survival and noise meant loss. He remembered the weight of his gear, the smell of metal and dust, the sound of breath inside his helmet, loud enough to feel like shouting. He remembered holding a young soldier's hand as the light left his eyes, promising help that would never come. He remembered learning that sometimes the world does not reward sacrifice. Sometimes it barely notices. When he came home, the world felt too bright and too fast. People complained about small things. They spoke over each other. They filled silence with noise because they were afraid of what quiet might reveal. Elias learned to listen instead. He took work that required no stories, no questions, security, protection. Stand here, watch that, stay alert. And when the offer came to guard the home of one of the richest men in the country, he accepted without pride or bitterness. It was just another post. He did not know it would change everything. The billionaire's daughter was named Lila. She was 7 years old, with dark curls that fell into her eyes and a habit of tracing patterns on the table with her fingers. Doctors had tested her since birth. Machines had beeped and charts had filled with lines and numbers. The conclusion had always been the same. Deaf, the world adjusted around that truth. Tutors learned hand signs. Her mother spoke slowly, carefully, as if volume could replace understanding. Her father built a wing of the house just for her, filled with light and color and quiet. But something was wrong. Elias noticed it on his first day. He stood by the wall during breakfast, eyes scanning the room, when Lila's spoon slipped from her hand and clinked against the floor. A small sound, easy to miss. Lila flinched. It was subtle. A tightening of her shoulders. A blink that came too fast. Elias felt his chest tighten. Later, as staff moved through the halls, he watched her eyes track footsteps she was not supposed to hear. He watched her pause when doors closed softly behind her. He watched her turn her head toward whispers meant for adults only. She was not reacting to vibration. He knew the difference. She was listening. The system around Lila was strong and confident, built on expert opinions and years of assumption. Doctors spoke with calm authority. Specialists nodded in agreement. The billionaire trusted them because trusting them was easier than hoping they were. Wrong. Elias said nothing. He waited Dot. He watched Dot at night. During his rounds, he passed the door to Lila's room and heard something that made his breath catch. Soft humming? Unsteady, like a child unsure of her own voice. It stopped the moment his shadow crossed the doorway. She knew someone was there. The next day, a tutor snapped her fingers sharply near Lila's ear to prove a point. Lila did not react, but Elias saw the truth in her eyes. The fear. The choice. She had learned not to respond. The tension grew quietly, like a storm building beyond the horizon. Elias felt it in his chest every time someone spoke about the girl as if she were broken. He felt it when the doctor said she would never speak. He felt it when the father signed papers without reading them, trusting systems that had already failed her. Rules pressed down on him. He was hired to protect, not to interfere. To observe, not to challenge. One word out of place could end his job, but some truths are heavier than rules. One afternoon, Lila dropped her book near his feet. She looked up at him, eyes wide, searching. Her fingers moved slowly, forming a sign he recognized. Thank you. Elias did not sign back. Instead, he whispered her name. Lila froze. Her breath caught. Her eyes filled, not with fear, but with relief so deep it hurt to see. She did not smile. She did not move. But in that moment, her silence spoke louder than any sound. She heard him. The day of the confrontation came without warning. Doctors gathered in the study, sunlight cutting across polished wood. The billionaire stood by the window, jaw tight. His wife sat with her hands folded, hope buried so deep it barely breathed. They were discussing permanent solutions, devices, limitations, futures, drawn in narrow lines. Lila sat in her chair, small and still. Elias stood by the door. When the doctor spoke the final words, "Nothing more can be done?" Elias felt the weight of every promise he had ever broken. He stepped forward. She is not deaf. Silence fell like snow. The doctor laughed softly, dismissive. The billionaire's eyes hardened. Years of money and power did not prepare him for hope delivered by a man in a uniform. Explain. The billionaire said. Elias did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He knelt in front of Lila and whispered. Again. She answered. Not with signs. With words. Soft. Shaking. Real. I can hear. The room collapsed in the gasps and tears and disbelief. The mother sobbed openly. The father staggered back as if struck. The doctor stared, pale, his certainty dissolving. The truth came out in pieces. A misread test. A rushed diagnosis. A system that moved too fast to listen to a quiet child. Lila had learned early that responding brought fear, more tests, more confusion. Silence had been safer. Elias watched the billionaire fall to his knees in front of his daughter, pressing his forehead to hers, grief and gratitude breaking him open. A man who owned cities had failed to hear his own child. Later, when the house was quiet again, the billionaire found Elias by the gate. "Why did you risk everything?" he asked. Elias met his eyes. "Because silence does not mean empty," he said. "And because someone once listened to me when no one else would." The story did not end with anger or punishment. Doctors apologized. Systems change. Lila received care that respected her voice instead of erasing it. She laughed louder every day, testing the world, learning it would not break her for being heard. Elias stayed on as head of security, though his title meant little now. To Lila, he was the man who listened. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden, she asked him why he always stood so still. He smiled softly. Because sometimes the strongest people are the quiet ones. Years later, guests would speak of the moment everything changed. Not the tests, not the money, but the man at the door who spoke when it mattered. The world is full of noise, but truth often waits in silence. If this story moved you, share where you're watching from. Tell us what silence has taught you. And subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet strength we too often overlook.